For people who are interested in powerlifting, find a legit powerlifting coach. Like, somebody who actually knows what they're doing is going to help you be the most successful you can be in that first year. Like, you're not ever going to have a period of time where you make strength gains as rapidly as that first year, which is why it's crucial. Like, you need to know what you're doing right out of the gate.
Newbie gains.
Yeah,
so you got to
take advantage of it.
do the research, find the right type of coach.
Yeah. And a lot of that is just like finding a proper powerlifting gym, because they tend to have powerlifting coaches working out of them or be owned by powerlifting coaches.
Podcasting from somewhere with protein shakes and no yearly membership fees. This is the HeroFit Podcast, the show that talks about the ins and outs of fitness, nutrition, and anything else that might get you feeling like a hero. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your hosts, Nick Stutzman and Dan Weber.
Hey, all you listeners out there, welcome to the HeroFit Podcast. I am Nick Stutzman alongside my co-host Dan Weber. Every show, we're going to tackle something fitness related, whether that be workout regimens, nutritional topics, anything we find that you might find interesting. And with today's episode, we're going to talk about female powerlifting with Riki Napiorkowski. We appreciate you taking the time to join us, and we have an amazing interview that we know that you're going to love. Let's get right into it. So, hello, Riki.
Hi.
Tell us about yourself.
I enjoy powerlifting very much. And I've been doing it since I started officially doing it towards the end of 2013. I had been in a car accident in 2012 and I was rear-ended. I had a lot of herniated discs. So in 2013, I just started getting really into fitness, trying to get healthier and make my back stronger. And in doing so, like around September, I think, I got a personal trainer and he helped me with the big three, just squat, bench, and deadlift, since those were all the most compound lifts that you could be doing. And he showed me good form and I just really took to it because I felt strong doing it and I just wanted to be stronger every time.
You got started working out because you were injured. And do you think that if you hadn't got injured, would you have ever really gotten into powerlifting?
I don't know, honestly. Like, being injured and being in pain all the time is what pushed me to just go and finally, like, care about my body and try and better myself. So I think I really needed that push to do something about my fitness, basically.
Because you had no prior background training, or
no,
did you play
not
sports
at all.
In high school or anything?
I played basketball in like middle school and my first year of high school. And then after that, I was done.
Do you think you were always strong? Did you always kind of consider yourself strong?
I guess kind of, but not like this. It's not the same kind of strong, at least.
Yeah, I mean, I think powerlifting strong is something where you think of like Arnold, or you think of just kind of like, you know, these big, beefy guys at the gym who are just, you know, lugging around big weights. That's what I think of powerlifting. Guys got a weight belt on.
About West Side barbell.
Yeah.
I honestly didn't even know powerlifting existed until like 6 months into learning these movements. Like
Really? So like as a sport.
Yeah, I didn't know that there were competitions where people competed with just squats, bench, and deadlift. I found that out after the fact because I think I was looking up to see if this existed, and then of course I found it, and I discovered that there is a federation who like did 2 or 3 competitions each year in Western New York, and then I started looking up records and stuff, and I was like, oh, I want to do that, and like that's really what like pushed me into the sport.
During that research, did you have anybody that you kind of looked up to, you know? I mean, as far as...
My trainer, like, he really helped me get my start in powerlifting.
And he was a powerlifter himself?
He was not, actually. He just worked out of the gym, and he trained people based on, like, what their goals were. And I was probably one of his first, like, pure strength athletes that he helped to train.
And so, I mean, at this point, you're kind of recovering from the car accident, but what would you, I mean, and then you found your passion, right?
Yeah.
And so what would you say were kind of some of your early goals for powerlifting then at that time? Was it just kind of just getting yourself as immersed as possible, or were you kind of just, you're like, I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do now.
Well, like once I discovered that there was a competition in the area, I was like, I want to compete in that competition. So this was in like January or February of 2014, and there was a competition that was going to be held in July. And I was like, that's it. I'm going to do that. It was only a push-pull, which is bench and deadlift. And I looked up the records for my weight class. So it was my goal. I wanted to make 2 new state records for my weight class. Like, that was it.
And you were what, like 6 months into exercise in general?
Basically.
And how far were you from those records at that point? Like, did you think that how realistic of a goal did you think it was when you were setting it?
It was bench was the only one that I was a little worried with.
So you had sort of you had some natural ability already.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it was, I'm the type of person who makes goals if I know I'm going to accomplish them.
Okay.
Like, I only wanted.
So it wasn't too pie in the sky, I guess.
No, it wasn't. Like, they were realistic goals, and I knew if I worked hard, I could get it.
Taking it back to when you first hired this trainer, what motivated you to do that? Did somebody suggest that to you? Did like a physical therapist tell you to do that? Or?
I had been working out on my own, and I would only use the machines at the gym because they stabilize everything. Like, you're only working one muscle at a time, and they help stabilize you elsewhere. And I just felt like that was the safest thing to do. But I knew I needed to do these other compound movements, but I was too scared to do it. Like, I didn't want to re-injure myself. So I was like, okay, I got to get a trainer. Like, yeah. I knew when I didn't want my husband to show me how or anything with like his little background knowledge on it. Like, I needed a legitimate person to show me how to do these things.
And so then I'm trying to like reverse engineer this. So just joining the gym, on whose recommendation was that?
Mine. I was like,
okay.
I did it.
So is this like after you got released from? Did you have physical therapy?
I did chiro and massage therapy. So okay. I did that for like 8 or 9 months, honestly.
So it was a long recovery process, yeah.
And then the insurance company didn't want to pay for any more help, and I was still in chronic pains.
And you needed an answer?
I was just like, I need my back to be stronger. Like, that was the point when I realized I should lose some weight, I need a stronger back, and maybe these things can help me live a life that isn't full of pain.
And then you ended up discovering something that you're very passionate about.
Yeah. So when I initially did that first competition, I would tell Tom, my husband, all the time, like, I'm just going to do this competition and set some records, and then I'll be done.
It's going to set some records, be one and done.
And I achieved all my goals during that first competition, and I was addicted. Like, I had to do another competition immediately after. I could not help myself.
What made you addicted? Because powerlifting as a whole, especially from a female perspective, it has to be. I mean, there's a lot of difficulties you have to overcome. I mean, and also stereotypes you're overcoming with that as well. But in New York State, I would imagine it's still pretty popular, perhaps, and as a female for their gender.
Honestly, when you're setting goals and you're accomplishing them, like, you're on cloud 9 when you accomplish them. I was just high with euphoria at the end of that meet, and like, I want to feel that all the time. I want to set goals and break them constantly, and that's what you get to do with powerlifting. It's not just at a competition. You're setting goals and accomplishing them like as you're training in the gym week after week,
seeing those numbers, the PRs, and all that stuff.
Everything is just constantly climbing,
and it's objective. It's numbers, so if you're achieving your goal or not. And you can also I imagine it probably attracts a certain type of person, at least, who, you know, wants to see that progression and be able to plan their cycles with numbers.
I feel like it does well by very goal-driven people.
Yeah. And I think all human beings are goal-driven in a sense. I mean, if you don't have a goal, it's hard to stay motivated.
Yeah.
And if you're not chasing a goal, I think just as a person, you're going to be less fulfilled than you could be if you had some sort of aim.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're coming up and you're starting this, and you said you had your coach who you looked up to, and so how important was it to, you know, have this coach? I mean, you could have any coach, obviously, but you found this one really helped for you. Do you think that was kind of like fate, or was this kind of like, you know, something that just kind of dropped in your lap in that sense as well?
He just happened to be the trainer who was in the gym at the time that, like, I was questioning, like, how much is it to train? Like, this is what I want to do. Is this something that you can help me with? But it was wonderful. Like, he ended up being such a great person. He's still a really close friend of mine. He came to my wedding. I went to his wedding. Like, I actually just texted him today because in my Facebook memories, 5 years ago today, I did my first deadlift at 225, but I did it for 3 reps, and it looked really awkward and uncomfortable, and it made me cringe. And I sent the video to him, and I was like, thanks so much for all your help. Like it still means a lot to me.
And with powerlifting, I mean, it's usually you're just kind of doing those 3 moves, but so, you know, having a coach there that can show you those moves makes it less awkward for you, right?
Yeah.
And what about now? Is there a camaraderie with powerlifting as well, outside of just having a coach, with like training partners and stuff like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Even though you're competing solo at all your meets, like, a lot of people enter meets as teams. Like, right now, I train out of Mustache Fitness, and like any meet that we're entering, like, we usually put Mustache Fitness as our team name. So, like, we're all encouraging each other and pushing each other to get new PRs and stuff. Like, I also have somebody at the gym that I train with, an awesome 64-year-old guy named Chaz. I, like, changed my schedule around to make sure they were the same days as his, because we push each other so much. Like, you're alone, but you need other people to help support you mentally in this sport. Nobody realizes how much of it is a mental sport. Like, some days you're fighting yourself to believe that you can pick up that weight. Like, it's kind of crazy.
And so Chaz is now your training partner and kind of like your coach. You guys coach each other?
We inspire and support each other.
Okay.
I would say.
Who does the programming?
He gets direct programming from Carly at Mustache Fitness, and I do my own.
Okay.
And do you think that you could do that at any gym, or do you feel like Mustache, I mean, and this for you personally, is, you know, is just a solid fit?
I think Mustache is a very good fit for me. They're one of the only powerlifting gyms in the area. They're honestly the most convenient powerlifting gym for me in this area. I think the next closest one is going to be Elite Fitness up in Niagara Falls. It's also, Elite Fitness primarily does USPA competitions. Like, all their members all do those competitions, whereas all of Mustache Fitness members do USAPL competitions. So they're different federations, and it's nice to train with people who have like similar powerlifting goals as you.
What's going on with these different federations? How do they, I don't know, interplay with each other and relate to, you know, different records? And are there certain rules and restrictions and things like that?
All the federations are a little different, but like there are a few like big things. Is the federation drug tested or undrug tested? Mm-hmm. Like, that's probably the most divisive thing in powerlifting. I prefer competing in a tested federation because I personally am not using any performance enhancing drugs.
You're not on the HGH?
No, not on anything. So I just think it's a more fair playing field for me to compete in.
Yeah,
it's not fun to compete against somebody who is on steroids. Actually, at my first competition, there was a girl there who was very clearly on steroids, and I was so glad she wasn't in my weight class, honestly.
Competing against other people that were natural.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that if I were a power lifter, I would have this exact same attitude about it. And I personally don't really have an issue if from an ethical standpoint, like if you want to do steroids
that's
for
your
yourself,
yeah.
like that's your thing. But just be transparent about it, and also just compete against other people that are in the same boat. But don't pretend you're natural or something like that. Then that's an ethical problem.
Okay, so yeah, other than the federation stuff, what is a typical workout for someone who's a power lifter?
Well, I know what my workouts look like. So
yeah, give us your regimen.
So
it's obviously been successful.
I usually do 3 times a week. In the beginning of my programs, like when I'm doing a volume block, I try and do 4 days at that point. But honestly, 3 days is just what works the best in my schedule. So I break it up into like a leg day. That's my primary focus. And then I have a push and a pull day. And on my leg day, that's where I'm doing my heavy squats. But I also throw some bench in there. And I also do a deadlift variation. And then on my push day, that's my heavy bench day, I also do a different percentage for my squats. And then on my deadlift day, or my pull day, I'm doing deadlifts. And I'm also doing more bench.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do my lifts on the other days, but they're generally at different percentages from like the heavy day for the main day.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of people, even if they're not powerlifting, should be training more the way you describe. And I don't know if we touched on it in our last podcast, but I think we might do a future podcast just talking about this concept of doing like a full body workout every time you go into the gym, but each day having a different focus. So if you were to go 3 times a week, you do full body every time, but one day you focus on bench, another day you focus on squat, another day you focus on deadlift. Yeah. And the other time you're just getting the movement and you're just getting a little bit of work, but you're not like straining or going to failure, except for on the focus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah, that's just really intelligent. And you mentioned something about, you said when I'm in a volume cycle. So you're also doing like periodization essentially, where you're like breaking up your, I'm going to focus on volume, max strength, like time under tension. I don't know.
So it all depends on how long I have leading up into a competition. Mm-hmm. But say we have 7 months. So for 2 months, I'll do a volume phase. So it's going to be high reps at a lower weight for everything. And then the next 2 months is my strength phase. And so instead of doing like sets of 10 and 8, we're going to 5s. Mm-hmm. And then the next month or 2 or whatever, we'll move up to like triples. So this is going to be like kind of a lead up into a peaking block, but like it's just really intensive. And then like for peaking, it's just doubles and singles. And everything is above like 90% at that point.
Wow.
But you're not doing a lot of volume because you won't be able to recover from the heavy lifts if you add in all that volume.
Right.
So as your weights go up, your volume is decreasing a lot.
Now, do you find that you have to monitor your nervous system more than your muscles or your body even when you're trying to peak? Or do you not really pay too much attention to that? So I kind of feel like it's easier to recover the body. It's easier to recover from like a muscular standpoint than it is for your nervous system, especially when you're going to failure or using heavy weights.
Yeah. I don't pay attention to that as much as I do my body. Mm-hmm. But like when I start peaking, that's the only time I have caffeine before a workout.
Oh yeah.
Like I I have some like weird heart stuff, and if I have caffeine, it like rapidly it gives me like crazy heart palpitations, scary heart palpitations, and a lot of anxiety. So like if I'm starting a peaking block, I'll probably bring in like a cup of coffee and I'll drink it slowly over the course of 2 hours before my workout. So like I get some effects from it, but I don't make my heart go crazy.
Because you just need a little extra
I need a
boost.
little extra something.
Yeah.
And then,
I can relate to the caffeine heart palpitation anxiety thing.
Yeah, it's a little much.
I've been experimenting with some different like amino acid formulas to try and limit that. I might talk about that on another episode.
Okay. And for me, I have a nice pre-workout, and I don't ever feel like the jitters or anything like that. I don't even know. I mean, I guess you can become immune to it.
Yeah, different bodies process caffeine differently. Yeah. I know 23andMe does like testing to show you, where you fall in that spectrum.
Up until a few years ago, my mom absolutely could not have caffeine. I don't know what's changed as she's gotten older, but
yeah, that's interesting that it changed.
It was a heart stopper kind of thing. So
my quick pro tip is that theanine is helpful with that, but.
Okay.
So what is it? So you're typically planning as a powerlifter 7 months out to a competition?
It honestly depends on the person. Like when I first started, I was doing 4 or 5 competitions a year. I was very addicted and wanted to do that. But now in my mature level, just kidding. After doing it for a while, I realized my body doesn't want to do that many competitions at all. Honestly, ideal is 2 a year, 6 months and 6 months. Like that is the perfect time period. It gives me enough time to recover. And you also have to think like when you have a peaking block, everyone does a different amount of weeks for their peaking block, but I tend to like 5 to 6 weeks. Like it's just a good number. Like I've noticed the most success that way. And you're not getting stronger during a peaking block at all. You're just basically priming your central nervous system for the overload that you're going to place on it at a competition. So you lose 5 to 6 weeks of like building your base up and strength. So like if you're doing less competitions, that means you have more time to get stronger, basically. So I've learned that I have to slow down a little bit and it'll be better in the end. I don't have to do every single competition.
Yeah, it's interesting that you discovered that kind of later on. So do you think that it would have been helpful if you knew this stuff earlier, that you maybe would be further along now? If you were doing so many competitions, do you think you lost on some strength gains that you could have had?
There are a lot of things I wish I knew when I started.
I think everyone would say the same. So,
but
if you are a newbie listening to this right now you have an advantage.
Honestly, the biggest thing is like I really think that everyone should have like a proper powerlifting coach, because you make the most strength gains probably during your first year. Like you're never going to make gains as quickly as that first year.
Yeah.
And if you have an actual powerlifting coach, no offense to the trainer I had, like he was great and he got me into everything, and like that's irreplaceable. But like sometimes I wonder, what if I had somebody who like actually did powerlifting programming and stuff.
Programming for strength goals specifically.
Yeah. Like he did
with form
his best that he could have done. But if I had that other person, I feel like I would have been a little more ahead after my first year than where I was.
So what like when if you're doing 2 competitions, you're kind of breaking your life maybe into like 6 months and 6 months, give or take. How was your dieting between all that? Does that fluctuate with the blocks for the training?
Yes, it can actually. So I've like moved back and forth between federations over the years, and just this year I've gone back to USA Powerlifting, and their weight classes are set up differently than the federation I was with previously. So I've had to lose like 10 pounds to get into their weight class, because if I wasn't under 184 or 185, then I would have to compete with all the women over 185.
Right. So they stop at that point.
Yeah.
It's like 185 plus doesn't matter
like
if you're
it's an
250.
unlimited. Exactly. There was 1 year, like 2 years ago, my first USA powerlifting meet. I didn't cut or anything. I just went in, and I think I weighed in at 191, and I'm positive I was the skinniest person competing in that weight class, like by 75 pounds. It was crazy. And I was like, I never want to do this again. I want to like compete with people who are closer to my size.
So your focus has been on building strength and maintaining and or losing weight? Yeah.
So if I need to do a cut, ideally you do that during your volume phase. Mm-hmm. Because once you start adding, like once you're in the strength phase, I think it's just too much for your body to be able to recover when you're on a deficit of any sort. So like volumes, while it's exhausting, it's a little easier to come back from, I think. At least for me personally. Like, I want to be eating a lot when I'm lifting heavier weight.
So do you plan your eating and your meals the same way you plan your programming?
I do. Well, I have I'm a member of Eat to Perform, so they calculate my macros for me, which is really awesome. Like they have all of my Fitbit stats and my FitnessPal stats like funneled into their little system. So they'll tweak my carbs and my fat accordingly with what my current goals are. So like when I needed to do my cut 2 months ago, they cut all my macros down for me. And they just give you the macros, and it's your job to figure out how to fill it. But they're looking at how much sodium you're having each day and telling you, hey, stay under 2,000, and how much sugar you're having, and how many steps you're getting, how much sleep you're getting. Like they're pretty intense about it. So they give me my numbers, and then I plan the rest of it.
And what gets measured gets improved. So I'm assuming that's been very helpful for you.
Yeah, it has.
I think I've heard a lot of people that question whether they need to count their calories or count their macros, and find that as soon as they start logging it, that it makes a big difference in their behaviors.
So many people just aren't aware of what they're really eating in the course of a day. Like there are a lot of people who undereat like crazy and they don't know.
Hello.
Like I feel like that's just as big of a problem as overeating. Like you can't.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. That's a problem I've faced most of my career. I have low appetite, kind of naturally. I have to like remind myself to eat and drink.
and if you're under eating constantly, you're killing your metabolism too. So it's like counterproductive in a way.
Oh yeah, there's people that are trying to lose weight and they're under eating.
Yeah,
and you would think that would be working for them, but
it's not.
Not
like
so
your
much,
body,
especially chronic under eating.
Your body gets used to it, and then it just becomes harder and harder. Mm-hmm. So.
And then the food quality will play a role as well. That's getting into more of the advanced stuff.
The micros.
Well, hot take is, do you think a vegan or a vegetarian could sustain that type of lifestyle?
Well, I think it's possible, but it's really difficult. Like, you need to have so many extra hours in your day to be able to plan accordingly. Like, I feel like most of the issue with, like, macros and stuff is meal planning and meal prepping. And if you're cutting out, well, not necessarily, if you're cutting out meat, like, the easiest way,
getting the protein. At least.
I don't know how you're gonna do it. Like you need an extra few hours every day to plan around that.
Are there? I guess I would wonder if there are any vegan powerlifters out there. There's vegan bodybuilders making it happen.
They're few and far between though.
Yeah,
like it's just not very common. It's difficult, and like when you are vegan, you have to really think about your protein sources too. Because you can't just eat, like, it might say protein, but it's not a whole protein.
Yeah. Like,
you have to think about what you need to eat with that protein source to, like, get all your amino acids in. Yeah.
proteins, which I don't have a specific example, but it might be something along the lines of I need peanut butter and peas because the two proteins like are synergistic.
Brown rice and lentils together, they make a
complete protein. Yeah.
So like it's things like that. Like you might be counting your macros like, oh yeah, I hit 150 today, and it's like, well, how much of what you ate was like processed well by your body? Were you hitting all of the amino acids that you need? So like there's so much more than just like hitting that number when you're like limiting your sources like that.
And if you were a vegan, I'm sure you would hear a lot about what you're eating from your coworkers. But even when you're not, I'm sure that that's a thing you run into.
Let me tell you. So there was
if you're prepping your meals, what kind of social issues might you run into?
Well, last week there was a really big snowstorm here. Lasted a few days. So on Wednesday and Thursday at work, they gave us half days. And for the people who came in, which was like 1/4 of the building, legitimately 1/4 of that building came in, they bought food for us. So the first day was salsaritas catered. The next day was pizza and wings. And I just get looks when I pop open my Eat Right food container, and I've been eating those lately. They're really good, by the way. But like I'm getting looks because
let's get that Eat Right money.
So like I just choose to stick to my plan. And I get looks for it. And then on Friday they had a Super Bowl party, and they set up all this food on the filing cabinet right in front of my desk. And I'm just like, well, that doesn't fit my macros today. Yeah. It doesn't fit my goals. It's not even fitting my macros. Like, I have certain goals, and I can't eat shit to get there. Yeah. Like, I could fit that stuff, but it's not going to do me well in the long run. That's where I get.
I respect that dedication. But yeah, I know I've been in that situation where you eat a salad every day for lunch, and eventually people just start looking at you like you're the crazy person while they're chomping on their wings and fries.
Yeah, I've brought like my own meals to Easter dinner before because I had a competition like a week later. So at that point, everything has to be dialed in. There's no anything. So
I've never been that intense. I give up my diet for the holidays. And for the family.
If there's free food from work, I'm sticking it to the man, and I'm eating the food.
I think the difference here, though, is like when you have a competition where you're making weight for it.
Oh yeah,
like if you get a cut, I definitely understand.
I've never competed in.
When I wrestled, I was like that. I worked at Pizza Hut when I wrestled, so that was even worse.
Really bad.
So I would be like starving myself the entire time, and I'd be looking at like if somebody messed up a pizza, they'd put it in the back as like a mistake, and people would eat it, and I'd be like,
yeah. I just did my cut during the holidays. Like there were food days almost every single day at my job, and I was just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is great. But you do what you have to do. I'm more passionate about like making my weight and like hitting all my goals with powerlifting versus eating that one-time cookie. Like that's really what it comes down to. What's more important to me? And right now for me, it's powerlifting.
Do you ever plan cheat meals, or do you believe in that concept?
Not really. Like I can fit a cheat meal if I want to, basically. So like since I'm like for vacation this year, I'm going to Japan. So Tom and I have been going out and getting Japanese a lot recently so that we're prepared for our food choices, and we are masters of chopsticks at the same time. And like crazy high in sodium, like absolutely not something I would normally plan in. And I've been eating like a big breakfast and then that for dinner on the weekend. Like I plan my macros so I can fit eating that fun food, basically. Like it's not necessarily a cheat meal. It's just not ideal for me to fill my macros with. But I still do it. Whatever.
Yeah.
I do what I want.
Do you have a favorite cheat meal?
I don't even know. Like when I'm like in a really strict part, like say I'm on an intensive cut, or like I'm a week out from weighing in, that's when I crave all of like these weird things. It's when I'm absolutely not allowed to.
Mm-hmm.
When
you're mostly restricting
yes,
yourself.
Yes, exactly. That's when I start craving things. It's mostly fried food, honestly, like tater tots. I really like tater tots. And Reese's shapes. The shapes,
right? Of course, you got to have like the trees and the Easter eggs.
That's the
They're
best
better
peanut
than
butter
the
to
traditional
chocolate ratio. So
those
are the
I would
things
agree with
crave.
that. Yeah. You're absolutely right about when you are mostly restricting yourself. That's when your body plays the most tricks on you. When I was going through a no carb diet recently, I was dreaming about like sugary foods and ice cream and stuff.
You're like,
because that's what gets me sugar.
On a normal day.
I wouldn't dream about sugar otherwise.
Yeah.
So getting to something a little bit more of a sensitive topic, and I think this is something that you'd be very authoritative on is the women versus men in the powerlifting, the stereotypes, and sensitivities and whatnot, the double standard. And so what are some of the things that you encounter as a female powerlifter that, obviously men don't necessarily encounter?
So the main thing that I get anytime people hear that I'm a female powerlifter is, oh, don't beat me up, or don't beat your husband up, or something like that. They just always assume that I'm this threatening force now.
Really?
Basically.
Like aggressive person.
Like, that's how they envision me. I'm not allowed to be a normal person and be strong as well.
And do you think that that's, more of their insecurity, or just because it's, like I said, it's not something very common that you might encounter as someone?
I do, because I almost entirely only get comments like that from men. I would say like 90% of the people who make comments like that are men. So I feel like that has something to say about themselves being threatened.
Do you think female bodybuilders get the same type of treatment?
I honestly couldn't speak to that. Like, I'm not in that
realm
at all. Yeah.
So and I'm assuming you'd rather that somebody just take an interest in, ask you about your experience. And in some cases, they think they might just think they're being funny, even if they're not super insecure about it, but not really realizing they're
perpetuating the stereotype.
Yeah,
basically.
the social history or background to whatever.
Yeah. So when I had my competition in October, that was the last one I did. My work actually, like, instead of a bulletin board, we have a TV on every floor, and they like put up a picture of me and like said good luck at your competition. And I had so many women come up to me and tell me like how cool that was, and like it really inspired them, and they were asking me questions, and I don't think any men asked me a single question. So that's also a good indicator with how like women in strength sports is perceived.
Yeah.
Like, women tend to look up to other women in strength sports, and men kind of belittle you a little bit. Sorry, guys.
No, I mean, that's why we found you to be a very special guest, because of your background with this and your passion for this, because, shining a light on the fact that there are these types of issues.
Yeah, and I wouldn't know about it because no one's ever commented about, the fact that I work out or lift, or when I played sports, and it's not unusual, and it doesn't freak people out, I guess.
It's not a He-Man woman haters club necessarily, and obviously we're, as males, we don't have this type of we don't have that type of issues. So
the other thing I've never really, I shouldn't say never, it's more rare for me to encounter a guy also who might be hesitant himself to lift weights or something, because it's more
ingrained
in us. And it actually, on some level, I might feel bad for some guys who have no interest in physical activities or strength training or weight training because, you know, maybe they feel like they have to live up to some sort of expectation that's there. But setting that aside, what was interesting to me about what you said about the women saying that you were inspiring them, do you feel that any of them could have potentially been either in your shoes or even just doing more weight training or strength training, but were, you know, hesitant or holding back, or not even just your coworkers specifically, but in general?
Absolutely. Like when I first started training at the gym, like it was very obvious women always use machines. It was so rare to ever see a woman in the free weight section. Mm-hmm. Like I feel like it's just a very intimidating area, especially if you don't have like a Sherpa, so a trainer or a husband going with you and saying, here, like come do the free weights with me. Mm-hmm. Like if you're by yourself, it can be very intimidating. And some of the people in the free weight section are obnoxious. Like, mm-hmm. I mean, there are obnoxious women too, but I think there tend to be a few more obnoxious guys. I might be biased though in that statement.
No, you're right.
Like they're grunting and stuff, and they're taking up like so much space, like with all their weights because they've made like little circuits for themselves and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like you don't want to get in anyone's way. You don't want people coming over to you and like telling you how to do stuff. Like you don't want to be mansplained anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and this is how Planet Fitness built their model, trying to work around some of those, I don't know if you call it stigma, but I'm not sure what the appropriate word is, but essentially that situation, that intimidation that you could face. So, and from that standpoint, like I make fun of Planet Fitness all the time because I think they go a little bit overboard, but I understand where they're coming from and the niche that they're trying to fill.
Yeah.
Do you think social media with the, you know, kind of immersion of the internet and whatnot and the growth, do you think there's that helps or hinders the sport?
I think it absolutely helps. And you can tell by the numbers, like the amount of women who competed 20 years ago was probably less than 100 total across the world. Like no lie. And now every year, the amount of members like to a federation like USAPL is almost doubling. Like every single year, and that's males and females. Like they're able to hold entire events of only women now. Like
that's great.
This year they're having a Women's Day on, I think it's May 4th, and there are 8 cities across the U.S. who are hosting like female only powerlifting competitions.
Wow,
in my
that's
federation. Great. Like there are that many people who are doing it now.
Yeah, and then
really cool.
In that short of time period. Yeah, I'm guessing that the internet makes it so that not that it's just more acceptable, but even it's just introducing it to an audience that may have not even thought about it previously, or maybe did think about it but thought like, I don't want to be like I don't want to be the only person like standing out. I don't want to be like the weirdo. So now it's like, oh well, there's a tribe, and there's lots of people that are doing this too, and it's okay if you want to do it as well.
I think Instagram is like the social media of choice for getting powerlifting out into the world. There's so many powerlifting accounts, and you can just get sucked into the rabbit hole and find thousands of other female powerlifters. There are so many powerlifting accounts dedicated to showcasing different female powerlifters, like Girls Who Powerlift. They show you people who are just starting out with powerlifting versus veterans who have been doing it for 20 years. Like you see the whole range of it, and it's easy to find yourself in somebody that they're posting. Like I think that's the big thing. Like
this is the positive side of Instagram.
Right? Yeah. What would be the negatives?
Well, I don't like it when accounts are supporting, like, I'm an anti-drug using powerlifter. So I don't like it when people are promoting powerlifters who use steroids, because I feel like for a naive audience, they might not realize that to hit those numbers,
creating an unrealistic standard.
Yeah. So like, people are upset that they can't be strong like that, and they're not realizing that that person needed extra help. So some things like that bother me.
Yeah, I would.
A lot of people, if you're not researching, you're just seeing it at face value, and you don't know the whole story behind that.
Absolutely. I think that's you kind of just, in the powerlifting world, touched on the pros and cons of Instagram, I think, in other aspects of training or even life. But, if you were to take, like, let's say, like, figure competitions as an example, it's creating an unrealistic beauty standard for women. But then on the other hand, it's showing that you can lift weights, and you're not going to necessarily bulk up if that's not your goal.
Yeah, exactly.
So take some of the stigma of weight training away for, females in particular, but then it might add this other, well, these people are doing something very extreme. They also could be using PEDs of some kind and creating unrealistic standards of what your body should look like. So,
and also, I feel like if you end up getting into like the competitive powerlifting group, you can fall victim to comparing yourself to people you're seeing very easily. Even people who aren't using PEDs and stuff like that. It's not the healthiest thing to obsess about other people's numbers, and that can like do terrible things to your own lifts. Like, you really need to just try and focus on yourself as much as possible. But you also are competitive. Like, so you want to know what your competition is doing. So
you want to,
it's a very fine line.
You want to know what the competition is doing, but your focus should always be on competing against yourself. Yeah. Ultimately.
Do you think that also applies for like men versus women? Do you think that there's like I should be able to, as a woman, reach some of the men's goals, or do you think that it's, it just should stay, maybe with the internet, just, kind of, women, men type thing?
I think that there are going to be people who are just truly gifted with like raw strength, and like there are probably like 2 or 3 people in every weight class who are just insanely crazy naturally on their own, and they are hitting numbers that are in line with men in heavier weight classes. But that is not a normal thing. Like, unfortunately, women don't build muscle like men. Like, it's just so much harder for us to gain strength than it is for men. Like, just from like a physiological standpoint. So
now we're getting controversial. We're saying that there's biological sex differences. That's sarcasm. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
No, I mean it's true.
It's been proven quite a few times.
All right, so kind of getting into the minutia of your competition, do you primarily, is there more, but just deadlift, squat, bench? Those are the 3 things you're always aiming for every competition?
Yes.
And is there more, and I think, I would imagine you could do less. You could just choose maybe 1 or all, or 2 or 3, right? But is there more than just those 3?
Some federations randomly have other lifts, like curls.
Nice.
100% Raw has a strict curl event if you choose to compete in it. I've only ever done squat, bench, or deadlift, though. Okay.
And what would be some of the records that you are holding right now or have held?
I have a lot of state records right now because I've competed in 3 different federations. It's over 20.
Wow.
But they're all just state records. I'm trying to think. My most recent numbers in October were all like, they're my meet best scores that I've ever had. Mm-hmm. So like for squat right now, I'm at 352. For bench, I'm at 237. And for deadlift, I'm at 429. Sorry, I have to convert to pounds for you.
On the fly?
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, I was going to say. I didn't know.
So all these competitions are in kilograms?
Yeah.
Converting.
All the plates are kilo calibrated. So. Yeah.
And so what are some of the feats of strength that you have? Just some of the records. What are they? Like the actual, which ones, like what are they? Is it because those personal ones every time in the meets? Have you hit those numbers?
The most recent meet I did, those were the numbers.
Oh, those were the numbers,
and
right.
Those are all new state records for that federation.
Oh, wow.
So you hold the record for bench, deadlift, and squat?
Yes.
Yeah.
And like, so if you're in a different weight class, you can get different records that way. I feel like USPA was the very first federation that I was lifting with, and I lifted with them for like maybe 2.5 years. And I feel like I hold records in 2 weight classes still with them.
I was going to ask that next. Yeah, if you have different weight classes.
Yeah.
So is that the record in that federation, or?
Yes.
Okay, so each federation keeps its own
Yes.
records.
And now, so because you're breaking all these records, are you asked to go maybe any national competitions or anything like that?
Normally, there are very few invite-only national competitions. The ones that do that are the ones that are like have huge payouts. So they're asking everyone, like who has the highest lifts in whatever event, to come. So it's across all federations usually for those really big payout competitions. Although USA Powerlifting just started trying to have more competitions like that because they realized a lot of their lifters were being poached by these big event payouts because USA Powerlifting doesn't do that. So you might be really strong and you're like, why am I competing here? I make no money.
Yeah, show me the money.
Yeah, basically.
So do you think that that's something that they'll transition into later, or do you think that that's...
It's already starting. Like I'm trying to think. I don't know if this February competition is doing it for sure, but I know in July, the USA Powerlifting competition at the Fit Expo. Where is it? It's going to be at...
The convention center?
No, not the convention center. Off of Ohio Street.
Ohio Street.
Not like Silo City.
Riverworks?
Yes, there we go. Okay, so they're having
Can edit that.
Yeah, that was bad. Sorry, guys.
It's all right.
They're having a huge fitness expo. They did it last year. And so you know how there's like that little catwalk upstairs and you can see both of like the rinks to either side? Mm-hmm. So last year there was USPA powerlifting and strongman in one side. And then there was a CrossFit competition and USA powerlifting in the other side. Just a full day of like strength events. Nice. There were vendors up top, like where that catwalk was. A lot of huge names in powerlifting came out and like did a meet and greet and stuff. And both of the powerlifting competitions offered huge cash payouts to the best lifters there. And they're doing the same thing this year with bigger cash payouts and bigger names coming.
Do you think that, do you already know of any records you think you're going to break this time around?
Well,
that you're feeling frisky about?
My next competition is in April in Wisconsin, actually.
Ooh.
And I don't know, honestly.
So if you're competing in Wisconsin, are you...
No, I'm still a New York lifter.
Okay, so you're in New York City. Okay.
Yeah, it's the state that you live in. Mm-hmm. So like when I get my USA Powerlifting membership, I'm registered in New York State. So I can't just switch it up and go to Wisconsin. I
feel like you're a competitor anywhere, but I do understand like if you're coming to a competition, and obviously there's more than just Wisconsin and New York people, right? There, that I guess you're just kind of in the federation. It's not really necessarily about the states, right?
So
I was to say, what is your goal in terms of placing overall at that competition?
Yeah. Well, I want to win first place. That's my ultimate goal. I'm just starting to get into my strength block right now, and I'm not sure yet where I'm going to be because I just recovered from an injury like a few months ago. So I'm still trying to feel out squats to see if they're on par with where they were last time. to know if I should attempt to make a PR. Like, that's not necessarily my goal for this meet. I just need to qualify. Like, the only reason I need to do this meet is so I can qualify and do nationals in October. Like, that's the big prize for me this year. Like,
that's your goal?
Yeah. So this meet is just a stepping stone to get there. But deadlifts are looking promising right now. Like, I'm pretty sure I should be able to get a PR, and same with bench. But I would need a very good bench PR to break the state record right now. And I'm not close to squat or deadlift yet.
Yeah, I saw you were putting up like 231 or something like that, right? Which is close to what you said was, I think what you said was like 237 was your meet PR or whatever.
But right now the state record is 242. And that is my safe plan. Like, I'm pretty sure I could do 242. And I don't know if I want to push for 248 just to get a state record with it. Like,
it's crazy. It's the matter of pounds. Like, you know what I mean?
I know.
Honestly, bench is the hardest, though.
But at that point, for your weight and all that stuff, like that, I guess that makes sense.
And with the bench press in powerlifting, you have to pause at your chest and become completely motionless before you're allowed to press. So you don't get any bounce or anything.
Momentum.
Yeah. It's done. So bench
is
like
momentum.
5 pounds makes or breaks you. Like, it's really crazy.
That's still really cool.
So talk a little bit about having to overcome an injury. What was the toughest challenge that you had to deal with? Was it mental or physical?
Oh, mental. Absolutely mental. Because while you're in everything you're doing, you just keep thinking, 2 months ago, I was lifting this much more weight than I am now. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm still trying to overcome that. Like, I had a very good week last week in terms of lifting. I had good numbers, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm on track. I might actually hit PRs at this meet coming up. And then I squatted yesterday, and everything felt really heavy, and my medial glutes were bothering me. And I have no idea why. I don't know what I did to them, but they were just bothering me in a way that was not conducive to good squats. Like, my hips were really slow to lock out because I couldn't activate them the way I wanted to, just having that pain there. So I didn't move my squats like I wanted to, and then I'm like, like, should I redo my whole program right now? Like, can I handle that weight? And then I made a little video because the mind is so mean sometimes, and I did a side-by-side of the same weight from the week previously to yesterday. And it was so much easier and so much faster. And I'm just like, okay, you're fine. Like, your glutes were just bothering you. Like, your strength is there. Don't worry about it.
So were you worried that you might have re-injured yourself or anything like that? I mean,
that's always a worry. But yeah. I don't think my injury was excruciating pain. Mm-hmm. And not like in my medial glute, like it was inside my hip. So I knew I could differentiate it between those.
Was there hesitation when you first came back too that you might,
yes,
either re-injure it or just that you weren't ready for it?
Honestly, absolutely. It was really like I was still feeling it a little bit. I took off 3 full weeks from deadlifts and squats, and that's the most time I've taken off from those lifts since I started. I've not taken off that much time consecutively with nothing, not allowed to do a single thing, not even lightweight. So it was really tough. And when I started getting back into it, everything just felt awkward. It felt heavy because I haven't touched in a while. My CNS lost all of its priming. Like, it was just weird. And then when I went to deadlift, which is what I was doing when I injured myself, on a warm-up, like when I finally got to that weight, I was so scared. I was like, well, all the weights up to this were fine. Just like when I injured myself. Like, I was thinking, like, this is it. When I do this weight, it's going to happen again. But it was fine, so.
Yeah, I found that I've had some injuries, and the mental challenges are just as difficult, if not more difficult, than the physical ones sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's harder. Also, like, you want to jump back into everything so fast.
You got to be patient.
You do. Like, you're going to injure yourself again if you aren't patient, and that's probably the hardest thing, especially like I have a competition. Like, I know what kind of numbers I should be hitting right now to be on track with like goals that I'm setting. But now I'm like realizing, I might need to be a little more patient, maybe take a step back and reassess
yourself.
what kind of goals I can hit here.
Yeah.
And or else I'll be like really depressed about how things are going, and I don't have time for that. Basically.
And physically, what were some of the challenges that you had to deal like? You just said how you couldn't even do the movement at all, even with a lightweight. So
I was not.
Were you doing any kind of rehab activities or just strictly resting?
Well, I got like a lot of stretches from out of my gym works a physical therapist named Matt Veronica. So he gave me a lot of good stretches to do, and I was doing them every day. I have a TENS unit at home. I have a foam roller. I have a racquetball. Like, I do all the things, and I do all my stretches. Also, I was really bored. Like, I'm used to working out for like 2 hours, 3 times a week. So I was just like, these are the next 3 weeks, like, totally dedicated to bench. We're going to go bench crazy.
Okay. And
I decided to do like different percentages because I thought I wouldn't exhaust myself if I did that. But that was a bad idea. Let me tell you. I ended up like fatiguing my upper body in such a way that like bench started like hurting a little. Like I overused it basically. And I was like, so now I was like, when I finally was able to deadlift and squat again, I broke myself on bench at the same time. Like, it was just too much. So everything was just very slow going to get back into it. I just have to be patient, and I can't go crazy. So it's all a learning experience, basically.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you don't have to deal with that again. But I guess if you do, you'll be more prepared.
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like in powerlifting, like if you're really intense about it, you're gonna get injured. Like,
yeah, that's what I hear.
Like they're pretty common.
Comes with the sport.
It does, because you're always trying to push your body to the limit,
and sometimes you might go over that edge, or you're not ready that day.
Yeah, or like in my case, something can just slowly build up over the course of time. Like, you have no clue that you have like something nagging you that's building up, because I mean, you're always exhausted. Like, there's something sore on me every single day. Like, by the time something's starting not to be sore, I go to the gym and I make something else crazy sore. So it's really hard to differentiate between pain and soreness sometimes. So if something is slowly building up, you might not notice it until all of a sudden, like, you try and do a 275 deadlift, which is like 60% of your max, and it just breaks you. You can't sit down on the floor.
Yeah.
So it's really difficult to know. Like, you can be the most careful person, but you're not going to set PRs that way either.
I'm curious a little bit more about your training. Do you strictly stick to training those 3 movements, or do you ever do accessory lifts and movements?
Yeah, I do. So a typical squat day, I'll tell you what I usually do. Like, I'll do my top set, and then I have back off sets just at a lower percentage to really drill in the movement. I've been adding in good mornings a lot lately, because after my last competition, I failed my 3rd squat, like, at this point where I should not have. And it all comes down to being able to pull my hips through and have, like, a stronger hip hinge. So I was like, good mornings, I want stronger hip hinge. Yeah. And that also has a lot of it also does a lot
carry over into the deadlift.
Yeah exactly. Thank you. Needed that.
So you basically choose your accessory lifts based on the weak points in the big lift and what where you might be plateauing or failing.
Yeah, exactly. So bench, I like to work on lockouts more so, because I tend to be pretty strong right off the chest. But then, like, my triceps are what fails me if I fail to lift.
So do you ever set up a bench, like, in the rack and then have pins so you're only doing the top half movement, something like that? Or
no,
do you train the triceps then?
There are 2 ways one of my favorite exercises is, like, I try and do the same bench all the time. Like, I want it to be the most, like, a competition style bench, because the more I practice that, the more carryover it has. I could do inclines or declines or whatever, but like a competition bench has the most carryover because that's what I do in a competition. So in order to just do my triceps, I have like a little block that you put on the bar. So like you can choose, it has different depths in it, I guess. So you can choose how much of a stop you have. So like I could be stopping the bar 2 inches off my chest because of that block, or I could go all the way down to just a 1/2 inch. And
Interesting.
like that just works at different spots of your lockout. And it makes it a little easier. So you can overload your bench at the same time because you don't have as much range of motion to cover.
Good stuff.
Yeah, no, that was definitely informational. Kind of wrapping this up. What are some of the other things you're into other than powerlifting?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No. Honestly, my world really revolves around powerlifting.
Do you think that it has to be as competitive as you are?
Yes. If I'm being honest, like if I want to continue to like strive for the level at which I'm trying to strive for, yes. It's very hard. Like it might be different if I didn't have a day job that took up so much time, but you only have so much free time, and it's not,
adulting is hard.
Like so that's a huge time suck right there. So I only have so much free time to do what I like.
Sounds like I gotta quit your job.
Well, if somebody could pay me to powerlift, then we'd be golden.
We'll find you some sponsors.
We need some bigger prizes at these meets.
We'll get Rogue.
That'd be cool.
We'll pull up your IG following. You could become an influencer.
There we go.
That's right.
Like all the things that I do, I try and think about powerlifting. Like, how will this benefit powerlifting? And also, it's not like I'm going to the gym to work out. Like I like to think of it like I'm training for a sport. Like say you're a competition swimmer or something. Like you're going and you're doing laps for a few hours, a few times a week. Like just because my location just happens to be at a gym with weights, I don't know. Some people like to just say, "Oh yeah, I go to the gym too," and it's like, but it's kind of different. Like I'm actually training for something.
Yeah, you're taking it very seriously.
Yeah, like I have a program and I have to hit these things on this week.
But even if you're an everyday gym goer, like the majority of people listening to this podcast are probably not powerlifters, and they're not going to ever be. But they should adapt your mentality in terms of identifying, setting a goal, and then having the right mindset that I'm doing this to reach my goal, and using positive motivation to attack the gym and attack the kitchen and attack your goal ultimately.
Essentially you're all in.
But I do like dogs, even though I'm not allowed to have one. I do. I have 2 cats. No dogs because I'm not allowed to have one, but I am obsessed with dogs. I go and visit my parents and I get all the dog kisses I can.
There you go. How long do you want to competitively powerlift for?
As long as I can. Honestly, I have the mentality that it's going to be easier to be successful once I finally get out of the open category for my age. Like by the time I hit 40s, then I'm in the special age classes for like 40 to 49 and 50 to 59. And also for powerlifters, people aren't really peaking until like late 40s, barring any crucial and like critical injuries that like really sideline you. But you can build your strength for quite a long time, which is very encouraging. Like there's a lot of longevity in this sport if you want to be good and keep going at it.
And because they have those different divisions, you can compete at any age, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like your
partner.
Yeah, my gym partner. He's competing with other 60 to 64-year-olds.
And when did he start?
A few years ago. Actually, he started a few months prior. I think he did gym stuff on and off. Like all his life. He was always an athlete. But like he got really intense into powerlifting a few months before I started going to Mustache Fitness. Like he was one of the first friends I made there.
So if you're looking for a sport you can train for the rest of your life, and you don't want to just choose golfing, powerlifting might be an option for you.
I feel like
if you do it right.
Yeah,
you got to take care of your body.
Yeah, you really have to do a lot of
recovery.
Yeah, exactly. Like you have to make sure you're foam rolling every single night. Even nights that I don't work out, I still have a foam rolling routine that I do every night. I have a TENS unit at home. Like if anything aches on me at any time, I'm like, okay, hooking up the TENS unit. Just like get a little extra blood flow in there. Like you have to try and be as proactive as possible, basically, or else you are going to get injured. And even if you are the most pristine, proactive person who does more foam rolling than lifting, like you still can chance getting injured. So
that's just something you accept, I guess, as part of the deal, but you're passionate about it.
Because it's such a wonderful community. Like you just meet so many different types of people and you all share that interest. But I guess that's with any passion. And it's just nice. Like everyone's cheering for you. I'm at a competition, like in October I competed at Virginia Beach. That's where they held their world championship. And the only person I knew there were like 2 people that I knew from other competitions. Like I just happened to be in with them, and Tom. And everyone cheers for you. That whole place just screams and yells your name.
That's awesome.
Like when you're lifting, they're all on your side. They want to see you make that lift. And it's really nice. Like, I don't know. There's this one guy screaming like a crazy lunatic. And I wanted to be like, I heard you that whole time I was doing that deadlift. Thank you. It
motivates you?
It does.
Yeah.
Like, it's so nice. I love it.
We've kind of heard similar things with other sports, CrossFit and triathlons, that there's a great community. So the fitness world, depending on what niche you select, it seems like you can find that community and that support. So that's a great thing.
Any pro tips you want to impart on the listeners, other than this whole podcast?
Honestly, so I have 2. If you don't want to become a crazy powerlifter like me and have your social life kind of tank, then you should still at least be doing squats, deadlifts, and bench in the gym. Like, just think about efficiency. Like, that is the easiest way to work all the muscles of your body. Learning those 3 lifts. They're the 3 compound movements. And if you want throw in overhead presses, make sure they're strict though. Like I hate it.
And make sure you have proper shoulder mobility.
Yeah. But
like me.
Exactly. Like that's the one thing about overhead presses. Some people don't do them because of shoulder issues. Like I feel like that's more common.
I try to squeeze my shoulders back once I get it up.
Yeah. And when you're squatting, parallel or below. Like a lot of people say squatting so deep is bad for your knees. It's not. It's worse for your knees if you don't hit parallel or deeper, because all of the stress from the squat goes into your knee as opposed to down through your foot. Like that's a huge thing. People don't realize that. Squats to depth or below are better for your knees. And if you do have knee problems, slowly work on it. You can get there. Like, don't try and do crazy weights. Bring the weight back down. Right. Like,
start with some body weight and
exactly.
Goblet squats and work your way into a back squat.
You can also go on Amazon and buy a cheap pair of knee sleeves. Like I have a really loose pair that I wear when I don't want. So tight knee sleeves give you extra bounce out of the hole. It kind of helps you cheat a little bit. So when I'm doing my volume cycles, I use loose knee sleeves just to keep my joints warm. And that helps a lot because my knees do hurt. They creak and stuff. I got into a bad snowboarding accident junior year of college. And ever since, that one knee has not been right. So the knee sleeves help a lot. And anybody can do that. It's not crazy to wear knee sleeves.
Just touching on what you just said, I think we may have to do a podcast where we touch back on something I mentioned earlier, which is that you should adopt some of those powerlifting principles no matter what your goals are.
Yeah.
The full body lifting for everybody. So.
And then the other bit of advice for people who are interested in powerlifting, find a legit powerlifting coach. Like, somebody who actually knows what they're doing is going to help you be the most successful you can be in that first year. Like, you're not ever going to have a period of time where you make strength gains as rapidly as that first year, which is why it's crucial. Like, you need to know what you're doing right out of the gate.
Newbie gains.
Yeah,
so you got to do
take advantage of it.
do the research, find the right type of coach.
Yeah. And a lot of that is just like finding a proper powerlifting gym, because they tend to have powerlifting coaches working out of them or be owned by powerlifting coaches.
Makes sense.
Bonus. We were chatting before the podcast here, and you were mentioning that you were really fond of this certain brand of milk. So this would be like a nutrition pro tip. Can you talk about that?
Fairlife milk.
Yeah, so this is good for your macros?
Yes, Fairlife milk is the best milk possible.
We're getting that Fairlife milk money.
Yeah. So Fairlife, please sponsor me. If you open my fridge, I seriously have low fat, 2%, and whole milk, all to have, like, to play macro Tetris. Like,
right.
If I need extra fat one day, we're going for
Macro
full fat.
Tetris.
Yeah, that's what you have to do. I'm going to hit my macros on point every day. I'm not giving up my calories. And also, whole milk is so delicious.
No,
but anyway.
No.
Okay. Don't listen to him.
I'm not.
But
he and I have very different dietary philosophies.
First off, he's lactose intolerant, so
and I can have Fairlife milk.
Is lactose free, and it's
reduced sugar. Yeah,
it's half the carbs of regular milk. So Fairlife is ultra filtered milk, and they basically separate out all the components of the milk, like on a molecular level, and then they put it back together. So they leave out half of the lactose sugar carbs.
Yep. And
then they put double the protein back in.
Yep.
So it's so much better for you.
I'm well aware. I've been buying it on and off for the last year or so, and
I don't much like the chocolate milk though. It's like,
I was gonna say, if it comes from the chocolate moo cow, I'll allow it.
It's a little sweet for me. Like,
did they put like sucralose or something? I don't know if I've had that chocolate.
I don't know what they do to it, but it's sweeter, but like a kind of fake sweetness.
Yeah.
Not all about that.
Yeah, you get double the protein, half the sugar and carbs, and whatever fat level you need.
Yeah, exactly.
And that casein protein is very good for building muscle.
Yeah. Recovery.
Mm-hmm.
It really makes a wonderful before bed snack because
yeah,
it does.
It keeps you anabolic at night.
It keeps you full like all night long.
Yeah, keep stable blood sugar actually will improve your sleep.
Yeah.
Nick's over here laughing. I'm gonna have to teach him. We're doing a podcast where it's gonna be Dan tells Nick all about nutrition.
A bowl of cereal. Sometimes I'll have a bowl of cereal before bed too, because like a spike in your insulin right before bed helps put you to sleep too.
Oh yeah.
So
I do the carb tricks. Oh, now we're gonna geek out a little bit. I like to do carb. Well, first of all, I keep my carbs super low, and this is something I've discovered recently that's great for my brain, like a keto diet essentially. But I come out of ketosis once in a while, and when I do that, I have carb backloading. So I take my carbs at night to increase the serotonin levels.
There you go.
Sleep better.
That's the way to do it.
The other sleep tip I got for people is collagen or bone broth or gelatin, whatever you want to pick, but get that glycine. You'll thank me later.
All right, Riki. What's next for you?
Well, right now I'm just focused on April, but I have nationals in October. So I need to qualify, but I'm not too concerned. Like, all my openers will qualify me by like 100 pounds over the minimum. So we'll be okay.
So it's just about getting there.
Yeah.
Does that affect your planning for October if you already are confident in your performance in April? Like, or are you going to treat April as if
they're totally separate meets? So like, I'll have a whole new program set up post-April with all my blocks scheduled and everything.
I guess what I was getting at was it sounds like it's not going to affect your planning. Like, if you were really planning on doing your absolute best in October, would you perhaps skip a peaking phase in April and just try to keep. Okay.
No. That far out, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It might be different if my competitions were only like 3 or 4 months apart.
Right.
Like if if I had to still qualify and I was like really close to nationals, it would be a token meet. Like I would just do the bare minimum to qualify, and I'd like try and plan it on a deload week when I usually do like a random single. Like I try and stay in line as much as possible with normal programming as to not mess up what I'm trying to do big picture.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's interesting to me because I used to coach track athletes, and there's the same kind of peaking concept that you want, but at the same time you want to win meets. So it's an interesting challenge for some runners if they really want to run their best race of the season at state finals, but also want to win meets.
Yeah, you need to hold back a little, like a few meets right before.
Yeah, and it's tough. It's like, I need you to be running at 95% for this run, but not 100. Like how's the athlete supposed to figure that out?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do want to set PRs in April. Like that is the ultimate goal. But if when I get closer, I realize like the numbers I have in mind aren't there, I'm not going to push it. Like I have no need right now. This is solely to qualify. Like it's not worth it for me to potentially like hurt myself by doing crazy numbers that I wasn't prepared to do. We need to be realistic here. Well, October. That's the goal.
I hope the best success for you. Maybe we'll have to have you on after October, see how you did.
Unless it was really bad, then I don't.
Then you don't want to commiserate.
Yeah. Don't contact me if you hear it was bad.
Fair enough. Where can we find Riki Napiorkowski outside of the gym?
Like social media wise,
yes,
or in general?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm at M&T Bank, so I thought that was that question. I don't use Facebook that much. Like I'm primarily on Instagram because that's where all the powerlifters are.
That's all the cool kids are.
Yeah. You can find me. My handle is Rikiellanap. Rikiellanap.
We'll add links as usual,
as per usual.
But I like to post most of my training on there, unless we're close to a competition.
So people can follow along with your training and your competition.
Yeah, but when we get close to a competition, I tend to drop off a little bit.
Yeah. Focus.
Sometimes I go private for a week or two.
Aaron Rodgers does the same thing. He's not tweeting in season.
Yeah. Well, I don't want anyone to know.
Well, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for
definitely
having me.
Been a pleasure. I've definitely learned a lot about the powerlifting aspect of it, and I attribute that to you.
Awesome. Great.
Maybe you might have even influenced some of Nick's training. I know he's got his goals are more in line with powerlifting, I'd say, than mine. I'm more like bodybuilding style.
Yeah, maybe
goals and training.
I'll tell you. We'll talk about it later. But yeah, maybe kind of. I prefer the power building aspect. That's what I'm working on.
Actually, there are so many people on Instagram who are self-proclaimed power builders and combine the two.
Yeah, we discovered that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Except I really don't care about the aesthetic that much, if I'm being honest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did that come up? You were like, I want to invent power building, and we looked it up. It was already in existence.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
He's like, I was gonna make that a thing. It's already a thing though.
Yeah, like a lot of people, like a lot of the power builders that I know of, they go and they'll compete powerlifting. Like that's basically the bulking season. Put on tons of muscle, and then they strip it all down and do physique like the next season or whatever.
Interesting. A
lot of people.
I would say your training style is probably more intelligent in your dietary approach and all that. This bulking, cutting stuff, I'm not sure how great that is in the long run.
Yeah, like I try never to cut because it affects my strength so much. Cutting is not in line with my goals. Like everything I decide to do is this going to help me or hinder me? But I need to be in a lower weight class. I want to compete in a more fair playing field here.
Yep.
Until they changed the weight classes, which they discussed at the end of 2018. They said they were going to do it. But until they actually go through with it, I'm stuck and I just need to weigh a touch less.
Fair enough. Well, I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much.
And hopefully this podcast will help you get to your goals. We'll give you that mojo, the podcast mojo.
There we go.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for listening to the HeroFit podcast with Nick and Dan. We hope you enjoyed the show. And if you want to learn more about this episode or other past episodes, please check out HeroFitPodcast.com. Our audience is strong, so we can't ask you to smash that subscribe button. Instead, please gently tap the subscribe button. Also, leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google, or whatever medium you're listening to us on. If you think someone you know would benefit from this podcast, please share it with a friend. Join us next time, and until then, keep it classic.
This has been another episode of the HeroFit Podcast, making humans great again, one podcast at a time.